With the Lakers, how well will they handle teams that can shoot the three? The Lakers are super efficient with their threes, ranking 7th in three-pointer percentage, but they don't get many shots up, ranking 29th in three-pointers attempted. Defensively, though they have the makings of a great team, they struggle to defend the three, too, ranking 28th in three-pointers allowed. With LeBron, Anthony Davis, and D'Angelo Russell, they should be able to keep pace with just about any team, scoring-wise, but it's hard to match teams who are making threes when you're making twos. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Lakers stick to their plan of playing in a paint-centric way, or if they're going to opt to get more threes up to match teams, because that seems like the option most teams opt for. For the Warriors, will their defense hold up? Just 2 seasons ago, the Warriors had the best defensive rating in the association, but now they rank 21st. My guess is their crunch time lineup will be Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Green, because that's been the best lineup that has 100 plus minutes together. But it seems a bit lacking in defense, with Wiggins and Green being the only plus defenders in that group. If they opt for Podziemski instead of Clay, they get another good defender on the court, but sacrifice about 10 points, so that kind of creates an issue in and of itself. It seems like they're kind of danged if they do, danged if they don't. And it seems like they're probably going to have to opt for the defensive struggle over an offensive one. My question for the Kings, unfortunately, is if they'll be able to traverse their injuries or not. Losing Kevin Huerter or Malik Monk wouldn't be much of an issue in a vacuum, but the fact they're both lost for at least the start of the playoffs is a bit damaging, because that's 25 lost points that they'll need to fill elsewhere. And they don't have the most direct path of doing that, because De'Aaron Fox is already scoring about 26.5 points a night, so he's about capped out. And then Domantas Sabonis is scoring about 20 a night, which is about his career high as well, so it's not going to be just getting him more touches either. So a guy like Keegan Murray, you might think has uncapped potential, and I agree with that. I think he's a super efficient player that could score more, but it's mainly going to have to be role players that step up like Murray, and that's not exactly what they're built for. The Suns have a simple question. It's what Suns team are we going to get? The Suns team that looks dominant on paper and has been for spurts this season, or the overarching, disappointing team that's existed for most of the year? The lineup of Beal, Booker, Allen, Durant, and Nurkic sounds very formidable, and their lack of depth should matter less, with starters getting increased minutes in the playoffs. So there's a chance they're a better team in the playoffs than they are in the regular season, but it's hard to feel confident in them because they just haven't been consistent whatsoever this year. And really, they have had some really ugly losses this year, be it to teams at full strength or teams that are missing their stars and seem like total gimme wins. Those are anything but gimme wins for the Suns. With New Orleans, I wonder if Zion will get the Giannis treatment of being walled off from the paint. With his lack of an outside shot and Valanciunas also not having one, I can certainly see teams putting several bodies in the paint, thereby making it harder for Zion to do what he wants to do. When this happens, I'll be curious to see how he playmakes out of it and how his teammates re-involve him with his number one shot being unavailable. This isn't me saying that Zion's really going to struggle in the playoffs, but I do think he might be a little bit less efficient in the playoffs than he has been in the regular season, because again, his best shot and the most efficient shot in basketball, being shots in close, are just not going to be as available to him as they have been in the regular season, because defenses are going to be more keyed in to tendencies. So I think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains for the Pelicans, and Zion in particular. For Dallas, the question is pretty simple. Who will they settle in on playing? The Mavs have been so banged up all year, they've only gotten one lineup of 100 plus minutes together, but Irving, Jones Jr., Doncic, Washington, and Gafford has an outstanding plus 15.5 net rating and a small 176-minute sample size. For reference, Denver's best five has a plus 13.5 net rating, but has played 913 minutes together. So it's very volatile for Dallas to have such a small sample, but man, has it been a good unit. I could see Gafford, though, struggling a bit with a stretch big, even though he's a good defender, just because he won't be able to match threes, and defensively, he'll be out of the paint where he's at his best. So do they go small with Washington at the 5? And if Washington continues to struggle with his shots, do they put someone else in entirely? The Clippers have a pretty blatant question for me. It's, will their defense finally take form? Kawhi, George, and Zubats are all great defenders, and though he gets a lot of flack for his defense, Harden actually isn't an awful defender, nor is Terrence Mann. So that means 5 of the 7 guys that'll get serious minutes are at least fine defenders, and yet they were below average 19th in defensive rating this year. They could be a team that improves as the playoffs come around and George and Leonard lock in more, but they could just be what they've shown this year, which is a disappointing defensive team. And really, I'm going to be surprised if it's fundamentally different, but at the same time, you should expect it to be better because the pieces are all there. There's no glaring weakness, and you have good defenders. It should be a good defense. My question for the Thunder is if they'll be able to roll with Josh Giddey or not. Teams already sag off of him, and when I say they sag off of him, I mean they really sag off of him when he's dictating the offense, and that's only going to get more prevalent in the playoffs. He could single-handedly kill their spacing then, which would greatly dampen their elite offense, or he could figure out his shot and be another playmaking option for OKC, which would be totally devastating because with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if he has the ball, he's going to be a threat to score every single time, but he also has some playmaking chops to him as well. So that's a little bit of playmaking right there. Giddey, even though he doesn't put up a ton of assists, that's mainly just because of their offense being sort of free-flowing and not really just stopping with one pass. So there's a chance that the Thunder could really be menacing with all these playmaking options, or Giddey could just, again, flop. With Minnesota, I have a general question. Can you go deep in the playoffs with an average to below average offense? They were 15th in offensive rating, and that's with Cat playing much of the year. With Towns likely being sub 100%, I think they can fall to below average in offensive talent, which would really be hard to back in the playoffs, even if they do have the best defense in the league, because at the end of the day, it's an offensive-driven league, and you're going to have to put up some points to stay competitive, especially in a stacked West. So I'm a little bit worried for the Timberwolves. I do wonder how this offense is going to look with Towns not being at 100%, but you also do have Anthony Edwards, so you're always going to have some fundamental offense to begin with. There aren't many questions to ask about the defending champs who returned the whole starting 5 and most of their bench, but the one question that does exist for Denver is if Christian Braun and Reggie Jackson can hold down the reserve minutes. Bruce Brown was such a pivotal part of their run last year, and I'm guessing Christian Braun will need to produce like that in a similar fashion from time to time, too. With that said, this Brown's production isn't guaranteed because I don't think he's shown to be quite the player Bruce Brown is yet, but that isn't to say that he can't get to that level. It's just more of a question than it was with Bruce Brown, who had a longer career and more of a showing of his production to that point. Whereas with Christian Braun, it's more of a question of, can you put it together consistently? Because he's definitely shown it in flashes, but he's going to need to do so pretty consistently because he's going to be their main option off the bench. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed for more content.